Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Sadatmadhyana Niratam Vishayebhyah Parang Mukham Naumi Shastreshu Nishnatam Chandrasekhara Bharatim Om. Page 16. Tad vairagyam jugupsaya darshana shravanadibihi dehadi brahmaparyante hyanitye bhogya vastuni. In this verse, Jagadguru Sri Adishankara Bhagavat Padacharya is giving a beautiful definition of what is vairagyam. So he says, Tat vairagyam. Vairagyam is that which is jugupsa. Ya jugupsa. That jugupsa meaning aversion. Aversion to what? Dehadi brahmaparyante bhogya vastuni. From this physical body, this human physical body, starting from that to the Sharira, the body of Hiranyagarbha, who is the Adhipati of the 14 lokas. He is Brahmaji, who is the firstborn, Prathamajaha. He is the first Jiva, and he is the master of the entire universe. He is the creator of the entire universe. He is the universal subtle mind that permeates each and every sentient being on this earth and in this universe. So, when we are talking about jugupsa or aversion to bhogya vastu, we are not merely talking about the sense objects that we as human beings have the capability to attain. Nor we are also referring it to the medium by which we experience those self pleasures, which is this physical body. So it is not just the bhogya vastu, and here by bhogya vastu we are not talking about things which are external to the body, we are including this physical body also. And not only are we referring to the sense pleasures that this physical body, this human physical body can experience, we are referring to the universe of experiential pleasure that even Chaturmukha Brahma, Hiranyagarbha, the Dehadi Brahma Paryante, here the word Brahma refers to Chaturmukha Brahma, not Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, the Nirguna Brahma. It refers to Saguna Brahma, it refers to Hiranyagarbha here. So, and Hiranyagarbha, the experience of happiness that Hiranyagarbha has is the highest experiential pleasure possible. And therefore, when we are talking about vairagyam, it is to the sukha that is experienced by this physical body, the human physical body, going up all the way to the sukha of Hiranyagarbha. Which is why in the Taittiriya Upanishad, when we are talking about Ananda Mimamsa, we are saying, the Upanishad says, consider a human being who is a young man, physically fit, well learned, and he is the ruler of this entire world. Assuming that there's such a human being, he says, consider that to be 1 unit of human happiness. 1 unit of happiness. And then it goes to higher species like the Gandharvas, the Pitris, to the Devas, to Indra, to Brihaspati, to Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma. And each unit, so Gandharva will be 100 times the happiness of a human. Then there's a Deva Gandharva will be 100 times of that Manusha Gandharva. Then the Deva will be 100 times that. The Pitris will be 100 times that. The Devas will be 100 times the Pitris. The, Indra will be 100 times the Devas. Brihaspati, who is the Deva Guru, is 100 times the happiness of the of Indra. And Chaturmukha Brahma is 100 times the happiness of Brihaspati. So in Ananda Mimamsa it says, when you're talking about happiness that we want to attain, what generally people are referring to is experiential happiness. They pray to Ishvara saying, oh God, let me be happy. That means what? Let me experience happiness. And the Taittiriya Upanishad is saying, whatever happiness that you're asking for, Ishvara, is one fraction of the happiness of that is experienceable by Hiranyagarbha. And then the Upanishad says, you, the one who is experiencing the happiness, is the same as the one that is experiencing Hiranyagarbha's happiness also. Therefore, it is not the experience may vary, but the experiencer is the Chaitanyam that experiences is the one Chaitanya. Between you, the human being, and he, Hiranyagarbha. And what this particular verse by Adi Shankara Bhagavad is saying is that by vairAgyam, what we are referring to is dispassion. Here the word jugupsa is used, aversion. Aversion to bhogya vastu, to the objects of experience, whether it be this physical body or the body of Hiranyagarbha, Chaturmukha Brahma. And how does one develop this vairāgyam to this bhogya vastu, objects of experience? The Acharya says, darshana shravanadivihi. So by darshana, what Acharya is referring to is by observing the objects of experience and seeing how the joy that it brings is limited. Observing what the flaws in those objects are. Why? Because one should not be attached to those objects. Our entire process of samsara is because we are so after experiential happiness that we keep chasing those objects which we believe will give us happiness. Unfortunately, those objects will never give us perfect happiness. There is always a mixture of sadness in that happiness. It is difficult to attain those objects. Once attained, it is difficult to preserve. Even if you preserve, you cannot preserve it forever. It will leave you. So there is sadness in attainment, there is sadness in preservation, there is sadness due to loss. Similarly, it creates an attachment, a bandha to that object. We are constantly chasing after it. We miss it when when it leaves us. It creates a sense of dependency upon that. And it never fulfills. Even if you have that object, the happiness that it gives you, it's only momentary. Maximum, it'll stay with you for a few days, that happiness. So, even when that object is still present, after a few days, you will develop, you won't have, there is no great everyday happiness that it brings. Just like a child, you give it a toy the first time, it will be very happy to play with the toy. When it sees the toy, it will be very happy. For the first few days also, it will only play with that toy, it will forget all the other toys. After some time, it will not even turn back and look at that toy. It will not even chase it. We are no different from that child. Our objects of experience also, it's atriptikaram. It is never fulfilling. It never fulfills forever. So, therefore, by these kinds of observations, we have to observe the experiential pleasures that objects bring and then decide for ourselves whether this is something that is worth going after or not. That is what darshana means. By the act of observation of these objects. Then Acharya says Shravana, by what the Shruti tells us about these objects. Because there are many objects that are beyond the realm of direct experience, we can only hear about it from the Shruti. So the Shruti will say, Swargakamo yajeta, he who desires heaven, perform this sacrifice. And once you'll perform the sacrifice, you'll go to heaven. Nobody in this world has experienced heaven. They may have experienced heaven in another physical body, but no one who, while they are present in this world, can say, yes, I have experienced heaven. Because that experience one would have forgotten. One does not recollect that experience with this physical body, with this mind. One requires a different sharira for that. Therefore, those kinds of experiences of higher lokas, the sukha from in Swargaloka, etc., will be much, much greater, much, much superior to the sukha of this world. But how do we know about it? We know about it only from Shruti. And then the same Shruti says what? Kshene punye martyaloka mishanti. Even that great punya that you have attained to, that takes you to Swargaloka, does not keep you in Swargaloka forever. After that punya has exhausted, you will have to come back. So even the devas who are called amaraha, they do not die. Is what the direct translation of the word amaraha means. But what does it actually mean? You're not talking about atyantika amritatvam. You're not talking about permanent immortality. You're talking about relative immortality. One may have, as a deva, a long lifespan. That's what this means. But even that long lifespan will come to an end. Even Chaturmukha Brahma, the highest deva that is, the highest jiva that is, even that Chaturmukha Brahma's life will also come to an end at some point. So, the same Shruti which talks about these different lokas, these different devas, the same Shruti says even their happiness is finite only, it is not infinite happiness. It is impermanent happiness. Even the devas, so many Puranas we study, we hear about. Our grandmothers and grandfathers would have told us stories of how even the Indra is in constant worry when the Asuras will come and attack him. He is worried that there are other jivas who are trying to take his position, that they are performing 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices. And so there are stories that we hear where there is a Maharaja who performs the 100 is going to perform the 100th Ashwamedha sacrifices, which will give him Indra Padavi, the post of Indra, and Indra will come to earth and try to create obstacles. Why is that? The sense of insecurity. Because even Indra himself is insecure about his seat. What to talk of our politicians? So, the Shruti itself will say. And similar, Adipada refers to Anumana. We can infer these things. We can conduct analysis and inference to realize that anything which is the object of experience is impermanent and is something that is not worth going for. So what constitutes everything, all these objects of experience, that they are all mithya, they are mithya bhutam. And we had started looking at Jagadguru Srimad Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswami's commentary to this verse. So I think we had covered the first 10 or so lines. Let me tell you the line number. Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangrahastaha Kukshau Swamatur Malamutra Madhye Ityadina Punyakshaye Punyakruto Navastaihi Nipatyamanan Shithali Kritangan Nakshatra Rupena Divashchutamstan Vicharya Kova Viratim Nayati Yatrasti Loke Gatitaratamyam Ityantashcha Shlokaha vairAgya Vishaye Anusandeyaha. So Acharya had quoted lots of scripture. And here he is quoting the verses from Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha, another great Advaita Vedantic work, there where it says that there are certain shlokas he is quoting, and he's saying if you look at this one particular section in the Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha, one must meditate upon this. Anusandheya, you should do anusandhanam of this, one must meditate upon these verses because they will develop vairagya for one. And the verse starts with Kukshau Swamatur Manamutra Madhye. So he says, what is birth? Birth is lying in the uterus of the mother, surrounded by all the impurities. That itself is so difficult. Even from the birth, human life is very, very difficult. And it is not just the human life, he says, even if you go to Swargaloka, Punya Kshaye, once the Punya that has taken you to Swargaloka has expired, and once you have experienced all the Sukha there, Punya Kruto Navastaihi Nipatyamanan Shithli Kritangan, one falls from the heaven. All the parts, all the angas have been separated, have been broken. And then he becomes like a star. So we should, therefore, what that means is, even a person who goes all the way to heaven will have to come back. Kshine punye martyalokam vishanti. Therefore, even the objects of pleasure in Sargaloka are finite only. Therefore, do not develop attachment to either this world or the higher worlds. Do not develop attachment to the experiential pleasures, because those experiential pleasures are finite, they are limited. And then he continues, Manusha dehadehe rogad yupaplatupam pashvadainam atyanta paratantriyam mukatvadi devanam rakshasadi piditattvam shabdadinam vishayanam bahuvida anarthapratatvam kurangadi drishtantehi anusandadhanasya sarvatranatmasu jugupsa sulabheti bhavaha. So he is saying, if you look at the human body, Manusha Deha, it is subject to roga, it's subject to disease. The word upaplutam means afflicted. It's afflicted by the ravages of disease. If you look at animals, Pashvadinam Atyanta Paratantriyam, one is completely dependent on others. There is no swatantrata at all. You can see how these animals are being subject to so much of hard labor. Like if you see some of the bulls and donkeys, etc., how they have been ill-treated. They have been asked to carry huge loads, and then they can't even complain about it, because why? They do not have the power of human speech. So Acharya is saying mukatvadi. So they can't even say that they are thirsty until that person, their master, frees them. They can't go drink that water. So it's complete paratantram. There is no swatantrata at all. So whether it's a human being or an animal, so what about something superior, like devas, etc.? He says devanam rakshasadi pidatatvam. If you are a deva, that itself does not mean that you are free from sorrow, because even devas are subject to suffering from the rakshasas. And if you look at the objects of experience, and here instead of referring to objects, he is talking about shabda sparsha rupa rasa gandha, that is how they are experienced. So some are experienced through hearing them, like music, song, etc. Some objects of experience are by seeing them, like a beautiful scenery or a painting. Some by their smell, like fragrance. Some are experienced through tastes, like food. Some by touch, like how soft or how hard they are. So, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, these are the uh, means by which one is able to experience. The types of experience fall within these five ranges, because our instruments of experience can gather these five things. And so Acharya is saying, if you take the objects of experience like Shabda, etc., they themselves are not something that one must follow. Because why? He says, Bahuvida Anartha Pradatta. Now, the thing like especially with hearing, you do not have control over what you hear. Like, if you do not want to see something, you can close your eyes. If you do not want to like smell something, you can go away from there or something. But what to do with hearing? If you are within earshot, then you will hear whatever comes to you. That is why the Vedic mantra, it says, Bhadram karnebhi shrunuyama deva. The Shanti mantram. Bhadram karnebhi shrunuyama devaha. Bhadram pashyema akshabhirgajatraha. So there, even before saying, let me see good things, it says, let me hear good things. Because seeing or not seeing, when there is one level of control we have, hearing there is no control. If you are within earshot, you will definitely hear whatever is being said. And if it's something which is, if it is something bad that is spoken, without any choice, it will enter you. You will hear it. And so Acharya says, Shabdadinam Vishayanam Bahuvida Anartha Pradatvam. And lots of anartha is possible by hearing something which you should not be hearing. Then he says, Kurangadi Drishtantehi Anusandadhanasya Sarvatra Anatmasu Jugupsa Sulabha iti bhavaha. So how is Shabda a cause of anartha? And so he gives the example, Kuranga Drishtanta. So this is an example, Kuranga means deer. So the deer, the example given is sometimes it is so transfixed by the music. So if there's a beautiful song being sung, the deer is as though transfixed by it, it will not move. So if a hunter comes and shoots it when it's so transfixed, that is why in sometimes in like when they go in the hunting parties, they will play sometimes very nice music, so that the deer is like transfixed by it, the prey is transfixed by it, and when it is so transfixed, they can easily hunt it. Even if a hunter throws its net at the deer, when it is so transfixed, it will not move. It will not know it. Why? Because even though the music is so pleasant, what did that music lead to do? What did the music lead to? Led to the capture of the deer. Sometimes it getting killed also. So it therefore Shabdadinam Vishayanam Anartha Pradatvam is you can know through the Drishtanta of the deer who is transfixed by music. And so Acharya is saying if you really think about it, it is very easy to develop dispassion towards any form of experiential happiness and all the objects that are capable of giving experiential happiness. Whether it is this human body, or an animal's body, or a deva's body, or even the objects of experience, they ultimately lead to patanam, to the fall. And therefore, an intelligent person can very easily develop vairagya towards these things. And by doing an anusandhanam, a constant thinking, thought about these things, that vairagyam will become stronger. That is how one develops vairagya. एतच्च शब्दादिभिः पञ्चभिरेवेत्यादिना स्वयम् उत्तरत्र स्पष्टयिष्यते. This itself will be explained in the Vivekchudamani itself, in the verse starting with Shabdadibihi Panchabhihi. Yadyapi apama somam amrita abhuma akshayam havai chaturmasya yajana sukrutam bhavati iti shruti avalokanena karmaphalasyapi nityatvam pratiyate tathapi yat kritakam tad anityam iti nyayasah krita tad yatha iha karmachita ityadi shruti anusarena amritakshaya padayoho sankuchita अर्थकत्वस्य अवश्यं वक्तव्यत्वात् न दोषः. So here he is referring to a Rigveda Samhita mantra. By drinking the Soma, we have become immortal. And then from the Shatapatha Brahmanam, Akshayam Havai Chaturmasya Yajana Sukritam Bhavati. The punya that is accrued by performing the Chaturmasya Yaga is akshaya. It is not subject to diminishing. That is, it is permanent. The punya is permanent. Now, Acharya quotes these two mantras, the Rigveda Samhita and the Shatapatha Brahmanam, and then he says, Iti Shruti Avalokanena Karma Phalasyapi Nityatvam Pratiyate. From these two Shrutis, the apparent meaning is that the results of karma are permanent. That is the apparent meaning. Tathapi yat kritakam tad anityam iti nyaya sahakrita. But we know that whatever is a result of some action, whatever is an effect, is necessarily finite. That is the general rule. If you observe, every single thing that is present in the universe is the product or the effect of some cause. There is no causeless thing in this universe. Everything is always the product or the result of something else. Secondly, everything in this universe is impermanent. Therefore, from this it follows that everything which has an effect is impermanent. That being the case, how can you say that the punya that is the result of some karma, some Vedika karma, even that is also a result. So that result also must be finite. Therefore, these statements, even though their apparent meaning is that the results of actions are infinite, are permanent, what we must understand is that it only is talking about a figurative permanence. It is not an actual permanence. It means the results are can be enjoyed for a long time. That's all this means. तद् यथा इह कर्मचित इत्यादि श्रुति अनुसारेण अमृतक्षयपदयोः अमृत अक्षयपदयोः सङ्कुचितार्थकत्वस्य अवश्यं वक्तव्यत्वात् न दोषः. So then he is quoting the Chandogya Upanishad mantra, तद् यथा इह कर्मचितो लोकः क्षीयते एवमेव अमुत्र पुण्यचितो लोकः क्षीयते. What this mantra is saying is that just like the results of actions undertaken in this world, those results are observed to be finite, to be impermanent. Similarly, the results undertaken in this world that give benefits in the next world, like a Swargaloka, for example, they will also be finite. And when we are talking of immortality or a permanence with respect to those lokas, we must understand that it is only an apekshika amritatvam, a relative immortality. It is not a atyantika amritatvam, an absolute immortality, an absolute permanence. Therefore, we must take a sankuchita artha. We must take an implied meaning. We cannot take it on its face value. We must limit the scope of its meaning so that it logically fits in the context that we are talking about. Continuing, Uktam hi abhuta samplavam sthanam amritatvam hi bhashyate iti. And then Acharya quotes the Vishnu Purana statement that by amritatvam, what is being referred to is the existence during one srishti. Abhuta samplavam means until the pralaya happens, that thing exists. So that is what is meant by amritatvam. So that is what we here mean by immortality. We are not referring to a permanent existence through all srishtis. We are only referring to a apekshika amritatvam or of relative immortality with respect to like smaller lifespan such as a human being's lifespan. So that completes the Vyakhya to this verse, the commentary to this verse. We will take up the next verse and its commentary in the next session. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.